Imagine a world where the line between genius and madness blurs, where desire doesn't obey the laws of the ordinary, but rather dances in the shadows of greatness. In that world live the chosen ones, not saints, not demons, but something more terrifying, something more human. And in their minds, sexuality isn't a simple instinct. It's a weapon, a ritual, a rebellion. This is not a list of taboos. This is a descent into the strange ecstasies of those who were never meant to be normal. The first is erotic isolation. While the world chases connection, the chosen isolate, but not out of fear. They do it to cultivate a form of control that only solitude breeds. In silence, their fantasies become orchestras of power. They do not crave partners. They crave the reflection of their own dominance mirrored back at them through abstinence. Sexual denial becomes an art, a sharpening of will. A mind turns so far inward that even pleasure becomes internal warfare. Next, predatory intellect. You think seduction is about beauty? No, the chosen seduce with ideas, with depth, with paradox. Their touch isn't on your skin, it's in your thoughts. They don't want your body. They want your surrender. They don't pursue you with lust, but with curiosity. They peel back your layers not with kisses, but with questions. And when you break, they don't need to own you. They've already rewritten the way you see yourself. Then comes spiritual sadomasochism, not just pain and pleasure. No, for the chosen, this dance becomes divine. Pain isn't just stimulation, it's enlightenment. The giving or receiving of it unlocks trance states, moments of clarity, even genius. They flirt with the edge of destruction not because they're broken, but because they know that only by standing in fire does the soul purify. Discipline, ritual, sacred suffering. That's how they rewrite their limits. The fourth, sexual alchemy of fear. They understand something most never will. Fear is arousal in disguise. That pulse, that breathlessness, that adrenaline. They use it, twist it, harness it. They don't run from fear, they court it. They dress it in silk, invite it to their bed and whisper secrets to it, because to them, fear is not the enemy. It is the rawest, most honest emotion. It reveals, it exposes, and in the hands of the chosen, it transforms. And finally, obsession with the forbidden mirror. The chosen don't seek sex for pleasure. They seek it to confront themselves. Through taboo, through deviance, through acts most would never admit to thinking, let alone doing, they chase truth. Each encounter becomes a mirror, a test, a confrontation with the parts of themselves that society begs them to bury. But they do not bury. They exhume. They dissect. They devour. In the ordinary mind, sexual abstinence is often seen as suppression, denial, or even weakness. It's associated with repression, shame, or the fear of intimacy. But for the chosen ones, the outliers who defy the rules of human nature, abstinence transforms into something entirely different. It becomes a throne, a seat of power, a method of self-mastery that separates them from the compulsive chaos of the world around them. They don't abstain because they're afraid of pleasure. They abstain because they've tasted it deeply enough to understand its weight, its influence, and its potential for enslavement. To the average person, pleasure is escape. To the chosen, it is temptation. Not temptation in the moralistic sense, but in the existential one. Pleasure can cloud clarity. Lust can distract from purpose. Desire, uncontrolled, is the leash around the neck of the undisciplined. So they choose restraint, not as punishment, but as power. In a society drunk on dopamine, bombarded with erotic images and constant gratification, the ability to say no is the most radical expression of freedom. Abstinence, for the chosen, is a rebellion against programming. It's the refusal to be reduced to a set of urges, to be predictable, to be ruled by something as primitive as the need to release. They understand what most won't admit. That abstinence, when chosen, not forced, is not deprivation. It is dominion. When the chosen sit in solitude, when they strip themselves of external stimulation and sexual satisfaction, they aren't empty. They are sharpening. Their energy doesn't die. It recirculates. The very biological tension that drives most people toward impulsive decisions is transmuted into something else. Vision, creativity, force of will. Where the masses dissipate their essence, the chosen contain it like a storm in a bottle. This isn't celibacy for purity's sake. It's abstinence as a weapon. They begin to see how others are puppeteered by their hungers. They watch people chase beauty, approval, orgasms, never realizing they are on leashes made of need. But the chosen sever that leash. They pull back from the edge of indulgence and realize the less they feed the urge, the more control they gain over every part of their being. That control becomes addictive, not because it makes them feel morally superior, but because it gives them clarity no pleasure can replicate. The absence of release does not create weakness. It reveals who you are when nothing is distracting you from yourself. The chosen confront that mirror without blinking. In that void, they meet the raw, agitated self that others bury under pornography, casual sex, validation. They don't run from it. They sit with it, wrestle it, dominate it, and in that process, something primal gets rewritten. The need to be filled gets replaced by the power of being whole. This is where abstinence becomes the throne. Because once you are no longer a slave to pleasure, you become a master of choice. You don't chase, you select. You don't crave, you assess. Desire no longer owns you. You own it. This creates a terrifying kind of magnetism, a sexual power rooted not in performance, not in physicality, but in restraint, in the tension, in the knowing that you could indulge, but you choose not to. Ironically, this withdrawal often amplifies their sexual aura. People feel the pressure they carry, the stored intensity, the focused attention, the stillness that suggests depth. Others sense that behind the quiet eyes of the abstinent is a volcano that hasn't erupted in a very long time. The restraint itself becomes erotic. The silence becomes seductive, because power is the ultimate attractor, and nothing screams power like total, deliberate self-control. For the chosen ones, abstinence isn't about pretending sex doesn't matter. It's about knowing that it matters so much. It must be guarded, not spilled carelessly. Every act of indulgence dilutes them. Every impulse resisted refines them. They are not monks hiding from the world. They walk through it, fully aware of its temptations but unmoved by them. And that ability, to walk through the fire untouched, is what turns them into something mythic. There's also an element of psychological dominance here, over both self and others. The chosen understand that the moment you need something from someone, especially sexually, you hand them leverage. But if you need nothing, not touch, not validation, not release, then you're untouchable. And in that untouchability, you become irresistible. Not because you seduce, but because you disrupt. You shake people who are used to being desired. You confuse those who weaponize sex. Your refusal to submit to lust destabilizes the very economy of attraction. Even when they finally do choose to engage sexually, it's never casual. It's not a surrender, it's a conscious offering, a decision made with intent, not appetite, and the weight of that choice is felt by whoever receives it. The chosen are not often understood, and they don't seek to be. Their ways are dark, disciplined, and dangerous. But in that path of abstinent power, they find something rarer than pleasure: control, clarity, and the ability to command their own biology instead of being ruled by it. To most, seduction is an art of appearances: flirting eyes, carefully chosen words, the shape of a body, the rhythm of a voice. But for the chosen ones, the truly awakened few, seduction is none of these things. It is not surface-level pleasure, nor is it the theater of lust. It is a war, a psychological assault, a game of presence, perception, and penetration, not of the body but of the mind. The chosen don't seek conquest through flattery or sex appeal. They don't need to. Their battlefield isn't your skin, it's your thoughts. And once they enter, they don't knock. They invade, quietly, slowly, surgically, one question at a time. One pause at the perfect moment. One look that doesn't glance at you but through you. They don't seduce to attract, they seduce to dismantle. The average seducer wants your attention. The chosen want your vulnerability, not to exploit it, but to study it. They aren't aroused by flesh, they're aroused by confusion. The kind of confusion that makes you question who you are, what you want, and why you suddenly feel naked in their presence, even fully clothed. That's not chemistry. That's psychological engineering. They know what most don't, that people don't fall for beauty, they fall for recognition, for being seen in ways they've never been seen. And the chosen see everything. They see the part of you you pretend to be. They see the mask. But they also see the glitch in the mask, the crack where the real you leaks through. They aim for that crack with sniper precision, because once they speak to the part of you no one else dares to touch, you're already theirs. They ask questions you don't expect. Not flirtatious, not obvious, just invasive enough to make your guard twitch. Questions that pull you out of autopilot and into hyper-awareness. Why do you always play strong? When did you first learn silence was safer than asking for what you want? These are not pickup lines. These are psychological tripwires, and they're placed with deliberate, ruthless care. They create intimacy without touch. They provoke arousal without words. They let silence linger longer than comfortable, forcing you to fill it with your own nervous honesty. They never interrupt your train of thought, because they want to see where it derails. Every movement is calibrated. Every stillness is calculated. They understand that true power isn't about taking control. It's about becoming the space where others willingly surrender theirs. This isn't manipulation. It's precision. The chosen don't manipulate because they don't need to. Manipulation is for those who lack power. The chosen are the power. They don't fish for desire. They become gravity. Others orbit them, often unaware of how or why. People are drawn in by the weight of their presence, by the rare sensation of being fully perceived. You don't leave a conversation with them feeling flattered. You leave feeling unsettled. You question things you thought were solid. You replay every word in your mind for hidden meanings, and they know you will. That's the warfare. It doesn't happen in the interaction. It happens after, in the quiet. When you lie awake trying to understand what just happened, seduction for them isn't a transaction, it's a transformation. They don't aim to be wanted. They aim to be unforgettable, not through beauty or charm, but through disarmament. They make you forget your defenses, forget your roles. They seduce you by showing you the part of yourself you've been ignoring, and then making that part feel seen, understood, desired. Most people perform their way into connection. The chosen deconstruct their way into it. They don't want the role you play in public. They want the raw code behind your ego, the glitchy, flawed, magnificent architecture of your private self. And the more you try to hide it, the more interested they become. Not because they're hunting weakness, but because they're fascinated by contradiction. That contradiction, in fact, becomes the lever they press. They understand that the same person who craves freedom also fears exposure. That the person who exudes confidence may secretly ache to be overpowered. They don't shame the contradiction, they seduce it. They mirror it back to you until you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist, until you crave resolution and believe, rightly or wrongly, that they are the only one who can give it to you. This is why their presence feels like a drug, not because it numbs you, but because it heightens you. It brings you into brutal, intimate contact with yourself. And that sensation, that hyper-awareness, becomes addictive. You begin to anticipate their gaze, not because it flatters you, but because it challenges you. Their attention becomes a test. Can you hold it? Can you survive it? Can you face what they reflect? They don't dominate with force, they dominate with insight, with knowing. And when someone knows your architecture better than you do, when they can walk through the halls of your psychology barefoot and uninvited, what defense can you possibly mount? What armor holds against someone who doesn't attack your skin, but your certainty? Even when they leave, they don't leave. They leave a mark, a mental echo. You carry their voice in your head like an unfinished sentence, like an itch you can't scratch, like a question you didn't know you were terrified to ask. They're not ghosts. They're viruses, viral thoughts, viral presence, and the seduction never stops. Not when the conversation ends, not even when the relationship ends. Because it was never about the person, it was about the impact. The war they started inside you. Seduction, in the eyes of the world, is about charm, beauty, and persuasion. It is the art of making someone want you. But in the minds of the chosen ones, the thinkers, the manipulators, the enlightened deviants, seduction is not art. It is science, strategy, psychological warfare conducted with silence, tone, and perception. It isn't about how they touch you. It's about how they make you think. True seduction does not start in the bedroom. It begins in the brain. The chosen understands something simple yet terrifying. Attraction is not about beauty. It's about control of attention. Whoever controls your attention controls your emotions. And whoever controls your emotions, even for a moment, controls you. That is the battlefield they fight on. They don't seek to be liked. They seek to be remembered. They don't perform, they implant. Their words, their presence, their energy, each is a psychological weapon designed to destabilize your usual rhythm and rewrite the way you see yourself. They are patient hunters. While ordinary people chase validation, the chosen study patterns. They observe. They watch the flicker in your eye when you lie, the pause when you hesitate, the softness in your voice when you mention something that once hurt you. They gather your weaknesses the way a collector gathers rare stones, but they don't use them immediately, they wait. They build a connection of trust, authenticity, and curiosity. They make you feel seen, because once you feel seen, your guard falls, and that's when the game truly begins. Psychological seduction isn't about saying the right words. It's about saying the words you didn't know you needed to hear. The chosen listen so deeply that they can finish your unspoken thoughts. They notice the subtext, the tone hidden beneath your words. When you speak about your past, they're not listening for content, they're scanning for patterns. Repetition, denial, hesitation, all signs of unhealed wounds. And they don't expose them right away. They simply touch them with precision, enough to remind you that they know. That's when desire begins to grow. Not because of lust, but because of recognition. Desire in its truest form is the hunger to be understood. The chosen offer understanding not as comfort, but as control. They draw you in by making you feel like they can read the code of your soul. And in a way they can, because they don't listen to your words, they listen to what your silence confesses. That's why their presence feels magnetic. You feel safe and threatened at the same time. It's intoxicating because it's rare. Few people ever look at you and actually see. The chosen look, and in that gaze, they begin their quiet conquest. They know that the mind breaks long before the body does. So they attack thought first, a subtle compliment that disarms you, a calculated question that makes you hesitate, a moment of silence where you find yourself explaining too much. You think you're bonding, but you're actually revealing. They turn vulnerability into a mirror. Each time you look into it, you see yourself through their eyes. And the longer you do, the more your mind starts rearranging itself to please that reflection. They never chase, because chasing reveals hunger. The chosen never hunger, they lure. They use stillness as a weapon. The less they do, the more you fill in the space with your own curiosity. Their mystery is not an act. It is a psychological vacuum. You feel the pull to understand them, to decode them, to earn their attention. And that effort, the act of wanting, is where the trap tightens. You think you are seducing them, but it is they who have engineered your obsession. Every conversation with them feels like an initiation. You come away feeling awakened, stripped, rearranged. They don't teach you. They expose you to yourself, and that exposure is addictive. They make you believe that being around them reveals something hidden within you. This is how the psychological warfare deepens. You no longer seek them because of who they are. You seek them because of who you become in their presence. They transform your self-image into a battlefield, and you willingly surrender to stay near the one who knows your map. Even their silence is calculated. They use pauses like scalpels. When you speak, they wait a little too long before responding, forcing you to over-explain, to reveal more, to prove yourself. You feel the need to fill the silence, to earn their reaction, to break the tension, but in that tension lies their power. It's the discomfort that breeds dependency, because the human mind cannot resist the urge to seek resolution. The chosen deny resolution. They keep you suspended between understanding and confusion, an emotional purgatory that feels both torturous and exhilarating. Their seduction is not physical because physicality is too easy. Anyone can touch the body. The chosen touch the architecture of belief. They change how you define attraction, how you define vulnerability. They make you question if love is supposed to feel like pain, if attention is supposed to feel like pressure. And once you start questioning, you are already inside their psychological terrain. They become the lens through which you interpret your emotions. That is the essence of psychological warfare, to become the filter of another person's perception. They do not conquer through dominance, they conquer through reflection. They don't tell you what to feel. They let you discover it yourself, all while they quietly guide the direction of your thoughts. When you feel seen, you feel exposed. When you feel exposed, you feel dependent. That dependence grows silently, invisibly, until you find yourself waiting for their validation like it's oxygen. True seduction is not the art of attraction. It is the science of control. The chosen understand that the mind is the ultimate erogenous zone, not because it feels, but because it interprets feeling. They rewrite that interpretation. They take the symbols of safety and twist them into intrigue, take curiosity and mold it into desire. They make you crave uncertainty. They make you addicted to the unknown. What the chosen seek isn't conquest, it's transformation. They want to leave a scar not on your body but on your mind, a thought that doesn't fade, a voice that echoes, a presence that lingers even when they are gone. They win not when you fall for them, but when you can no longer think of yourself without the imprint of their shadow. To the ordinary mind, pain is something to escape from, a signal of damage, a call to retreat. It's a thing to numb, to avoid, to fear. But the chosen ones see pain differently. They don't run from it, because they understand that pain is a doorway. It's not an obstacle to transcendence, it is the path itself. The chosen see pain as an initiation, a purging fire that burns away weakness, illusion, and false identity. In their world, pain is not punishment. It's evolution. It's how the spirit upgrades its software through the agony of awareness. Pain to them is the most honest sensation. Pleasure can lie, comfort can deceive, but pain tells the truth. It's the body's raw communication, the psyche's most direct language. When you're in pain, there's no pretending, no performance, no distraction strong enough to distort it. Pain strips everything away until only reality remains. The chosen understand this, and they use it not to destroy themselves but to refine themselves. They treat pain as a teacher, a violent, relentless, sacred teacher. They don't fear emotional pain either, because they know it's just the psychic equivalent of physical strain. Growth hurts, expansion hurts, realization hurts. The chosen have the courage to face what others suppress: heartbreak, rejection, loss, humiliation, loneliness. They know these experiences are not signs of failure. They are tests of calibration. Each one burns away what is false. Each one forces the psyche to rebuild itself with stronger foundations. They enter suffering willingly because they trust the transformation it brings. There's a dark serenity in how they move through pain. They don't scream against it. They breathe into it. They observe it. They study its texture, its rhythm, its message. They don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That shift in perception turns agony into alchemy. The wound stops being a curse and becomes a crucible. Inside that crucible, the chosen burn through layers of ego, entitlement, and fear, until only essence remains. They understand that without discomfort, there is no awakening. The mind left too long in comfort decays. It softens. It forgets how to adapt. Pain keeps it alert. Pain sharpens it. Every heartbreak stretches the heart's capacity to love without attachment. Every betrayal teaches the soul how to trust itself over others. Every loss expands the space where wisdom can grow. The chosen don't chase pain, but they don't flinch from it. They meet it as an equal, a sparring partner that forces them to rise. There is also a kind of erotic energy hidden within pain, a paradox the chosen embrace. The line between pain and pleasure, between destruction and rebirth, is razor thin. When you learn to sit inside pain without fleeing, it starts to transform. It becomes clarity. It becomes stillness. It becomes a strange kind of ecstasy born from endurance. It's not masochism, it's metamorphosis. The chosen use pain the way a blacksmith uses heat to temper steel, to make something unbreakable. This is why they do not seek a painless life. They seek a meaningful one. They know that a life free of pain is a life free of growth. The soul that avoids pain avoids itself. So they lean into the discomfort of discipline, of honesty, of confrontation. They accept the sharp edges of truth that cut through their illusions. They don't numb themselves with distractions or addictions. They take the pain straight, without anesthetic. Because in every ounce of suffering there is information. There is purification. There is rebirth. The chosen also know that pain is a mirror. It shows you where you still resist reality. Every emotional wound reveals an attachment to control, a hidden dependency, a false expectation. When life shatters those illusions, it hurts. But the chosen let it. They don't cling to the pieces. They watch the breakage like observers of a sacred ritual. knowing that something truer will rise from the debris. Pain cleanses them of pretension. It humbles the ego that believes it's untouchable. Through physical pain, they find endurance. Through emotional pain, they find depth. Through spiritual pain, they find meaning. They don't measure life by how easy it is. They measure it by how much transformation it forces upon them. Every scar becomes a story of power. Every ache becomes a reminder that they survived evolution. For the chosen, pain is a form of currency. It buys wisdom. It buys clarity. It buys self-knowledge. When others run from pain, they become trapped by it. When the chosen walk through it, they become free. Pain loses its power to intimidate once you understand it's a signal of growth, not punishment. The chosen let pain strip them down to nothing, because only in nothingness can the next version of the self emerge. The process is brutal, yes, but brutality is the language of rebirth. The fire doesn't apologize for burning. The blade doesn't apologize for cutting. Pain doesn't apologize for awakening. There's an elegance in how they suffer. They don't romanticize it, but they respect it. They move through agony with awareness, understanding that it's not an enemy but a process. They know every deep transformation begins with disintegration. Something must die for something greater to live, and pain is the midwife of that death. It's the dark womb through which the new consciousness is born. The chosen become addicted not to pain itself, but to the transformation that follows it. They begin to crave intensity, the feeling of being alive in the midst of destruction. They stop asking for comfort and start asking for clarity. They stop asking for peace and start asking for truth, no matter how much it hurts. They let pain carve them open, because they know the only way light can enter the soul is through the wounds it creates. In their philosophy, pain is sacred. It's the invisible sculptor that shapes character, endurance, humility, and depth. The ones who avoid pain remain shallow, soft, predictable. The ones who embrace it become dangerous in their serenity, because nothing can control the person who has already made peace with suffering. Nothing can break the one who uses pain as a forge for strength. In a world obsessed with control, mastery, and domination, the idea of surrender often carries negative connotations. We are taught that to survive and thrive, we must resist, fight, and dominate every impulse that arises within us. Yet among the chosen ones, there exists a paradoxical truth that in surrender lies the deepest form of power, especially when it comes to desire. To them, power is not about suppressing desire through sheer will, nor is it about indulging every craving. It is about surrendering control over desire in a way that transforms it from a wild beast into a source of liberation. This form of surrender is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is a profound acceptance of desire's existence, not as an enemy to conquer, but as a force to embrace with awareness. The chosen understand that desire is elemental, woven into the fabric of our being. Trying to completely suppress it only causes it to fester, distort, and grow into something uncontrollable. But surrendering to desire, meeting it without judgment or resistance, allows it to flow freely, reshaping itself into a force that serves rather than control. When they encounter taboo, whether sexual, emotional, or spiritual, they do not recoil or conform. Instead, they approach it with reverence and curiosity, knowing that taboo is the threshold where the mundane meets the mystical. By engaging with what is forbidden, the chosen confront their own deepest fears and shadows. They willingly explore the parts of themselves that society demands they suppress: raw desire, darkness, vulnerability, and chaos. In this exploration, they find liberation. Rewriting taboo is an act of reclaiming power. It is saying, "I will not be shamed for what is natural to me." The chosen refuse to let shame dictate their identity. They hold space for the full spectrum of human experience, including the uncomfortable, the erotic, and the transgressive. By doing this, they dismantle the internalized censorship that keeps so many fragmented and alienated from their true selves. This reclamation is not reckless rebellion. It is conscious defiance, a declaration that spiritual growth demands honesty beyond social masks. The chosen understand that taboo often masks deeper truths. Sexual taboos, for instance, are not merely about rules of behavior, but about denying certain kinds of pleasure, power dynamics, and spiritual experiences. When they rewrite these taboos, they reframe desire and sexuality as sacred tools for awakening, not just physical acts. They see sexuality as a portal, an initiation into altered states of consciousness, vulnerability, and profound connection. By stepping into the taboo, they access energies that are otherwise locked away by fear and shame. This process requires immense courage because crossing taboo invites judgment, rejection, and isolation. The chosen embrace these risks because they value authenticity and evolution over comfort and approval. They understand that true transcendence often demands loneliness, that the path of the outcast is the path of the visionary. By rewriting taboo, they carve out new spaces for expression and freedom, spaces where complexity, contradiction, and paradox can coexist without shame. Rewriting taboo also means transforming the energy of what was forbidden. The chosen don't just break rules, they create new meanings. What was once labeled perverse or deviant becomes sacred ritual. What was once hidden in darkness becomes a source of light. This alchemy is not about shock for shock's sake, it is about healing. They use taboo as a tool to shatter illusions and reconstruct identity on foundations of radical honesty and integration. They are masters of paradox, holding light and shadow simultaneously. They understand that embracing taboo doesn't mean being controlled by it. It means owning it fully and using it to transcend binary thinking. The chosen do not see behaviors as simply right or wrong, good or bad. They see them as expressions of deeper energies, forces that, when integrated consciously, expand consciousness and liberate the soul. By rewriting taboo, the chosen dismantle the artificial boundaries that limit human potential. They recognize that taboos are culturally conditioned fears projected onto the unknown parts of ourselves. The greater the taboo, the greater the opportunity for transformation. They enter these liminal zones with the intention not just to rebel but to transcend, to weave new narratives that honor complexity and multiplicity of human nature. Their relationship to taboo is deeply spiritual. They understand that sacredness often hides behind what is feared or rejected. The chosen approach taboo like initiates entering a temple of hidden wisdom. They respect its power and mystery. They know that to disrespect or trivialize taboo is to remain stuck in ignorance. But to engage with it consciously is to access profound healing and awakening. This conscious engagement with taboo requires boundaries, discernment about what is truly liberating versus what is destructive. The chosen do not confuse freedom with chaos. Their rewriting of taboo is a disciplined art. They do not seek to shock for attention, but to awaken through vulnerability and courage. They balance exploration with responsibility, knowing that true transcendence honors both the self and the collective. Ultimately, rewriting taboo is about reclaiming sovereignty over the self. It is about breaking free from inherited limitations and scripts that dictate who we should be and how we should desire. The chosen rewrite taboo to create a new paradigm, one where desire, power, shadow, and light coexist in an integrated dance. They become authors of their own moral and spiritual codes, guided by inner wisdom rather than external judgment. In doing so, they inspire others to question the boundaries imposed by society, to explore their own shadows without fear, and to embrace the fullness of their humanity. They offer a path beyond binary morality, a path that leads into the wild, untamed territory of transcendence where the sacred and the profane merge. By rewriting taboo, the chosen do not just break rules, they create new myths. They write the future by transforming the forbidden into a bridge toward wholeness, awakening, and liberation.